Good morning, viewers. You could go to my blog, www.boycott, B-O-Y-C-O-T-T, Belfast, B-E-L-F-A-S-T, .blogspot.com, and click on that first link I have there at the top, my Picasso web album. It gives a full history of the 5 years of my documentation exposing the corruption of Belfast City Hall and real estate agents, specifically to Seaview Terrace, the undisclosed hell I was sold in 2010. It's a 14-family dead-end street, a city street, runs alongside Route 1, and the hospital is across the street. The comprehensive plan has slated this area that just got voted through in October that none of us know what the specifics are. They won't update the new zoning that everybody's under with residential 1, residential 2, and residential 3, which is healthcare and housing. That's another story on the website. That's been almost a year. So this area is slated for healthcare drive. Seaview Terrace is still a residential neighborhood, but we are the Gaza Strip. We're surrounded by Israel, aka Waldo County General Hospital, who is expanding, and there's just not anywhere to expand except to make Seaview Terrace their parking lot and keep going down towards Route 1. The maps on that link will show you the whole area, and you can just look at it. You don't listen to City Planner Wayne Marshall, or all you have to do is just look at the area, see what they're planning to do, and you can clearly see that Seaview Terrace is getting taken out. And I've been fighting for 5 years to save it. So I've become a real problem for them, and they haven't been able to shut me up. Although they try, and here's Wayne in this meeting. It's almost impossible to get in touch with the planning board. And back in May, when they were starting the annex hearings for the Waldo County General Hospital to be built almost in my backyard, I came out of hiding and kind of shamed the planning board. I had a chance to do it, and I did, asking especially those that are parents how they can do this. And so what Wayne's talking about here is garbage. The past 2 meetings that I spoke at were on a subdevelopment that I didn't take any personal attacks on. And as they sit there and say they don't want to hear personal attacks, they are personally attacking our private properties. But we're not supposed to say anything. We're supposed to come and be respectful. Hi, Hitler. Right on. Yeah, sure, pal. And then across from Route 1, we abut Route 1. So on the other side of Route 1 is the Montessori school getting built as well, which also drains into Seaview Terrace. And then they're on the above Seaview Terrace, they're trying to do subdevelopments and push for residential where there's no infrastructure in place. Seaview Terrace is the infrastructure for above as well. The water all drains down to us. A floodplain, flood zone, private property, no rights of ways, no easements, never a natural outlet. The 1939 maps show that we were a farm. There was never a stream going through here. The city has made it a stream, an outlet. It's not even a stream. These were private property drainage ditches put in by the developer in 1967. Wendell McLeod, who has, McLeods are all over town, lots of property, lots of power, and must have gotten into agreements with the city to start sending some runoff through here. And it's just grown over the past 50 years. And that's another thing to be aware of, where they start these housing associations. It's another layer where developers will come in and make a subdevelopment, and the city won't take responsibility for the roads. But they make all these secret agreements, and the buyer has no idea, suspects what is hidden underneath until they move in and they find out that they have to pay extra fees, that they're not covered for this, for that, the roads aren't covered, and it's absolute hell. So the developers, once they start seeing me out here protesting development, which is what happened with the Britons on the past 2 meetings that Wayne's talking about, you know, it's very uncomfortable for a developer to think, oh my gosh, you know, this isn't going to be so easy to sweep under the rug and get this development up. So we'll just look at this part right now with Wayne. Now they're going to start bringing in, they're saying that if the meeting doesn't go according to plan, they're going to call a recess and call the police to come in and basically take me out. But, you know, I'm done with shaming them. They're just on their own. So this is just another diversion to pull away from what they're trying to do. Bob Whiteley was a tax assessor in City Hall that retired 2 years ago, the only honest official in City Hall. And he had told me what's coming down the pike under the comprehensive plan to residents is absolutely astounding, basically disgusting. And it doesn't take a genius to look at the map and see what they're going to do. And it's not by buying people out. It's by destroying their property and taking it through economic development, 5204, or inverse condemnation, flooding us out. You know, anyway, I could go on and on. See my blog.
That is a board discussion and potential action on a board operating policy.
This is Steve Ryan, the chairman of the planning board. He's fairly new. He came on when they were putting this comprehensive plan through, and they tried to put Seaview Terrace into another zone, and that's all corrupt. I think that's another smokescreen too as well. I'm not going to get into all that, but he turned around and said, well, I want to keep my lines clear on the new zoning. Like, you know, so the hell with the 14 families on Seaview Terrace. It's going to interfere with his lines. He wants us to go into this zone, this healthcare zone, and where we could have a meth clinic as my neighbor, because he wants to keep his lines clear. So screw you, Steve.
Policy to structure and govern the holding of public hearings here at the planning board. This is a policy that we've discussed a number of times in work sessions and consulted the city attorney. And we have a
city attorney
outline of such a policy that's been provided by staff for our discussion and consideration to adopt.
There's Wayne Marshall, the bald head guy.
Wayne, would you like to review the outline?
Sure, I'll
City
just
planner.
do it very quickly.
Good.
As the board is aware, the chair noted you've had a discussion of operating policies for several of your past work sessions. After the last two planning board meetings,
Wrong.
the chair, Sadie, Lloyd, myself, and city attorney had an opportunity to meet to review the way that the last two hearings went.
It wasn't the last
And
two.
particularly some of the concerns that were raised where one of the individuals who spoke
Me.
chose pretty much to disregard the direction from the chair. The direction which the chair had talked about is ensuring that any comment that was made
That was in May that the chair was trying to tell me that to not speak personally, and I just kept talking. These last two meetings were on the Britons, and I just presented the overall drainage coming into Seaview Terrace. So he's lying again.
there were no personal attacks, that things kind of stayed focused on the meeting. During the course of the individual offering comment, the individual basically just disregarded anything the chair said and continued to speak.
Lie.
We spoke about that in particular. And what was being looked at is how to take the overall draft policy that the board had put together before and said how to deal with these type of situations in particular. Everything was really focused as well as that was the role of the board. The role of the board really is as a fact-finding board and a board that has the responsibility to make decisions when it comes to development review applications. As such, the comment that's made to you really
makes decision on the lies that you feed them. So you are directing the meetings, giving them the information, and it's lies, it's corruption. So the public needs to step in and say, no, this is what's happening. And that is why they're getting all upset, because they're not able to control the information that's coming to the planning board. So now you can start holding the planning board accountable.
Needs to be focused on the application at hand. That isn't something that if it's an application that's dealing with a bed and breakfast on Church Street, that it's appropriate to be talking about a project that's occurring on Searsport Avenue. Just taking sort of an absurd example.
That is absurd. So what they do in these planning boards meetings for sites, they just look at the specific site, okay? They don't look at the impact to the area outside. Just how you're getting the water off your site, good deal, case closed. They're not looking at anything coming down the pike, anything surrounding it, how it affects private properties, just to get the water off of that particular site. So that's the problem. And that's got to change.
But with the application at hand, it needs to be what information are you providing that will assist the board in applying city ordinances. In that role, the board then has to hear what the applicant is saying, give the public an opportunity to hear what the applicant is saying, give everyone an opportunity to respond, and to make sure that things are done in an orderly and efficient manner. To that end, what was being suggested when we met with the city attorney is that, just as the board routinely does, you open a meeting to public hearing. The chair will make introductory comments, as Steve always has, explaining what the purpose of the application is and what permits the board is considering. And that you will ask people to speak, and in speaking that they should do just that. Be directed to the application, and to keep the focus on the matter at hand.
Wayne said 5 years ago, the only reason why people come out for these new site developments is because of drainage. They're really not concerned with who's moving into these sites, you know, what type of business it's going to be. It's always about drainage, because they do not provide drainage for the private properties. They send this runoff to private properties, and that's their infrastructure. And then Wayne Marshall will say it's a neighbor-to-neighbor issue. Then the city attorney will tell them that neighbors can sue each other through the nuisance law.
Should, during the course of someone speaking, as occurred particularly at the board's meeting in late August, that the individual who spoke when speaking, as occurred particularly at the board's meeting in late August, that the individual who spoke was making quite a few personal attacks towards staff.
No, I didn't.
Other state agencies, members of the council.
I stated facts.
It was really veering quite far off the basic premise that the individual spoke, which was very appropriate. Which the issue that the individual was talking to initially was stormwater, but when it starts getting off, instead of talking about stormwater, it was talking about the who's and the what's, and not necessarily in very complimentary terms.
No.
And when the chair said, "Please stay on target," that if that doesn't happen, it's really appropriate for the chair to rule the meeting sort of and the individual out of hand, to recess the meeting after giving appropriate.
Yeah, in that meeting, they didn't want to hear about all the path of water coming to Seaview Terrace. As I said before, you know, they want to just look at the one little area and not look at the outlying areas that are draining into Seaview Terrace. You have to take the whole picture into scope. And the Captain Albert Stevens School was the most corrupt site with drainage, proven many times over, and that is actually wiping out many private properties in the watershed residence, because that's at the top of the hill and comes all the way down. Wiped out Cedar Street in 2009, wiped out Seaview Terrace, half of it in 2009. 2011 is when I experienced all the slaughter coming down to us. So, yeah, okay.
Notice that this is what the expectation is. And if the individual continues to not heed the direction of the chair, who's acting on behalf of the board, or to basically bring their comments back on target, to recess the meeting and actually call the police.
Call the police.
And
Call
ask the individual, ask the police to escort the individual
Take
from
me out.
the board chambers. And during that recess time, the board would take no action. You would just basically be in a short-term adjournment, or recess, excuse me, not adjournment, until such time as the police had an opportunity to act, and then you could call the meeting back to order post that time.
Is this unbelievable? They're going to call the cops on me for talking about drainage. They did this in November 2011, November 1st, when I first went public. After 8 months of trying to work with City Hall to find out where this water was coming from, and all the doors were slamming shut in my face, and I had contacted the guy that was running for mayor, Jim O'Connor. He has a business over here about drainage, and he told me, and I was crying to him on the phone, I was so upset, and he said I needed to take this public. He kept pushing me. Of course he was doing it because, you know, he wanted to be mayor and he wanted me to expose all the corruption. So I did. I went out, came out from under the radar where I needed to stay in protection, and started exposing the corruption in Belfast City Hall. Right after that meeting, the city manager started having police come to the city council meetings to intimidate me and follow me out and have private conversations with me. I mean, it goes on and on for 5 years, and I'm still standing and talking.
The intent is not to be punitive toward any individual.
Right.
The intent is to allow the board to efficiently and effectively rule on the application at hand and to consider the evidence that's being presented, be it by the applicant, anyone in the audience, and such. It's not a measure we've ever had to take in the past. Generally, we haven't had some of the type of characterizations that ever had to take in the past. Generally, we haven't had some of the type of characterizations that have occurred in recent hearings. Most folks who speak, at almost every hearing I can ever recall, talked about the application itself and confined themselves to it. So what is being suggested is that the board, again, is laid out in the policy. You first determine whether or not there's any conflicts among the board, which you've been doing. You open the meeting to a public hearing. You allow individuals to speak. Once the hearing is closed, you close the hearing to any further public comment. The board then will make its deliberations and to act accordingly. That, in a nutshell, is what's being suggested. There are some things I know that, and to act accordingly. That, in a nutshell, is what's being suggested. There are some things I know that that the board may want to think about as well, as that when, I'll stop at that point for a moment and just see if there's any questions about what was said.
Good, Roger?
We have reopened it before. I have, back along. I mean, when somebody's come in and that didn't make it, you know, especially when we were going into the evening or something, didn't make it quite on time to hit the public hearing for that particular item, and did have something specific to say.
Okay, so we're at 7 minutes here on this section, and it goes on for 24 minutes. So they are talking back and forth, and one member is not comfortable with it. Other members are just not speaking at all, and it doesn't really matter. So basically, as we get into this meeting for the annex, you can review the meeting. I'm going to put the link up there so you can watch the whole meeting in its entirety. But Mike Hogan from the annex gets up to talk, and he's very vague on the drainage. My neighbors are there because they're also affected by the water, and the plan that he gives, the piping, was wrong. Later on he'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's further down, and it's only for the water draining from this site. So it's very misleading how they give presentations here. They're not talking about the drainage swale that runs behind the annex that brings more water from like White Street and some townhouses, a heavy amount. They're not talking about that, how that water is going to be coming into Seaview Terrace now. So there was one more thing I wanted to say, but I forgot. Oh well. I guess I will shut this off now and post it.